Over the past year, Dead by Daylight's lore has been slowly dying. Today I want to explore the reasons why this is, and hopefully suggest some ideas to get it back on track too. A big change this year was the lore being stopped completely for the first time since 2019. Tome 22 was the final entry into the tomes we had experienced for nearly 6 years. These tomes having 2 stories generally, which focused on one killer and one survivor, fleshing them out and giving us more backstory for them. Then we usually also got an additional entry focusing on some kind of lore character such as the Observer, the Red Crane, or even Maurice at some points. All of these stories help to really flesh out the world of Dead by Daylight and provide far more impact and meaning behind the endless trials of the entity's realm. It was therefore quite shocking when the lore was announced to just be completely absent despite the rifts remaining. For both Rift 23 and 24, there was no lore at all. This was shocking as it's a time you'd expect the developers would want to engage new audiences with their stories, with the massive FNAF players coming in. Instead, the lore was not just pieced back, but instead cancelled entirely during this around 5-month period, made worse by the fact that it was cancelled on the featured characters of Haddie and Elodie in the Rift, debatably 2 of the most impactful survivors lore-wise. It wasn't in vain though, as we were promised the lore was coming back and would be getting a revamp in its delivery and strategy, so it returned with Tome 23. However, this felt quite underwhelming. The current and new lore delivery system is a weekly entry, or about a third of a comic strip for us to engage with week to week. The first being about Trapper and taking a full 2 months to just reveal a single story. This is such a reduction to the previous tome entries, and the quality of the tomes themselves so far seem to be about the same. This new lore system has nearly all of the flaws of the previous one. The one benefit I'd say is that it's completely free, and you don't have to unlock specific challenges to read the lore. Many aspects of the lore have gotten far worse though. Its location for one. The lore is now so hidden away. It used to be connected to the current Rift Pass, where players would likely at least engage with it. Nowadays it's restricted to a small little icon at the bottom of the screen, and inside is all of the tomes, new and old. The fact they're so hidden away and still remain unclear in their presentation makes this kind of pointless. One of the main issues of the tomes originally was that they were simply incredibly confusing to navigate and explore. You were faced with a wall of tomes. Each tome has 4 sections, each section being about a different character. You were then presented with huge chunks of white text in a massive wall. It's sort of intimidating. There are visual elements to the lore here and there, with short, around 30-second long cutscenes, but these cutscenes typically bookend a lore story, so if you don't like reading and you look into the lore's visual aspects, you're going to be utterly confused when you see a number of disjointed cutscenes that typically don't even have dialogue. If you read the story, it makes sense and it's cool to see, but if you just watch these or watch them all on YouTube say, it's going to be a horribly confusing experience. The same goes for the comic strips present. These work slightly better and seem like overall a better compromise, but even these are quite intimidating to get into if you don't know the basis of the killer's story. The tomes are still basically like this after the supposed lore update, and it's still really confusing. There are no UI elements to let you know where to find relevant characters' stories. You have to individually click through each book and try to find it for yourself. If you click onto a character's page you want to learn more about, it doesn't tell you where to find it, or that it exists at all. Lots of people probably don't even know that there is more expansive lore for the killers and survivors, because unless you have the curiosity to click into this tiny tab at the bottom of the screen, you'd never find it. A far more efficient way to show off the lore would be to directly link the lore pages, or even just have the lore directly under the character's bio. I do think the key issue goes beyond just the game though, and is more to do with the approach to the lore itself and the lack of cohesion it's been given over the years. I think this is best represented by the DBD story game released last year, The Casting of Frank Stone, a game which should have been the pinnacle for the lore and story of the game, yet it seems to have sort of flopped considering how it's been almost swept under the rug since it came out. The closest thing we've had to it being recognized in DBD DBD was the announcement of the Frank Stone skin that was meant to come in September, yet we've heard no word of what happened to it since. The main misstep of Frank Stone to me was not even the game itself, but instead the cumulative progress of the lore over the past years. No one really reads most of it, and this is partly due to the lore being hidden away and not particularly engaging, but also because the story often feels so disconnected from what we're doing in-game. Much of the deep lore of the game covers what happens in the other areas of the entity's realm, and doesn't focus or explore the trials and emotions or thoughts of the killers and survivors. The lore that does focus on these characters focuses on it before they even got here, only giving us some idea on what they might currently be feeling or thinking. All of the lore stories are prequels essentially, with the ones that aren't all being set outside of the trials and not relating to our pool of characters. This has been a really lacking element to me over the years. I think people do want more lore set closely to the gameplay too, with the somewhat recent Ghostface graphic they released being highly praised, with it establishing Ghostface's thoughts and feelings about the various killers and survivors he's faced during 2v8. This is a really good way to implement lore that feels natural but also directly correlates to what players are doing in-game. It feels far less abstract compared to the stories of the Red Crane, as she fights serpents and oversized babies, especially as she's not found herself in the game yet. It almost feels like an entirely different world. All of it is too disconnected and frankly just confusing for someone trying to get into the lore. It used to be at least a bit more coherent when we had the Observer present, as he was a good figure for the lore and the wider world of DBD, but then he died. Or at least that's what the majority of the player base thinks, as his tower appeared ransacked and he disappeared. He's not dead, he's actually in the void searching for a way to escape the realm. This disconnect of players just not knowing what happened to him though is a clear outline to show what went wrong. The lore has been so hidden away, abstract and confusing, that the majority of the player base has failed to engage with it beyond a surface level of, that's the lore guy. Oh, now he's gone, he must be dead. This is part of a bigger issue too, which is that the lore never felt like it was really building towards much. This moment of the Observer disappearing was probably the most notable tome event the community was aware of, and yeah, it pretty much is, I'd argue. Despite the hundreds of entries and the ongoing stories over the years, none of them have really felt like they've built toward anything significant. There's been no huge payoffs in my opinion, no huge revelations, and again I think it's due to the lack of connection to the core game and gameplay. There's a bunch of cool moments for sure, but none of them feel too impactful to what we're actually doing in the trials. The growth on Macmillan was a good example of where this could have been fleshed out more, a mysterious growth persistently getting larger on that map, with it exploding and revealing something game-changing. Instead, most people just kind of forgot or never really found out what that was, because it was hidden away in the tomes, with no indication of where and when it would be revealed. Such a cool idea, but it feels squandered. In-game moments or events like this would be so impactful too and make a huge difference in my opinion. Much like introducing the Mad Designer Trix into the anniversary event. It adds flavor, it adds naturally occurring lore to the gameplay, and it makes people wonder, who is that? Environmental storytelling has always been a good strength of the developers, I'd say, but using it to build toward a satisfying conclusion I feel has been missed sorely. To top this all off, there was a recent King interview with Matthew Cote, where he appeared to reference the fact that DBD would begin more and more to prioritize licensed chapters over original ones if they present themselves. If there's a chance to fit in an exciting license that will get more people in, then that's the priority over originals. A somewhat disheartening thing to hear honestly, seeing as there has already been a great imbalance over the past few years when it comes to licenses and originals, especially in terms of quality I think, or QA maybe. To be fair to him too, as I do think this quote is being taken at face value quite a bit, people seem to be misinterpreting it, so I want to be fair here. His thoughts on it seem to be more regarding that licensed content and original content achieve the same goal of fleshing out the world of DBD, due to how they both fit into it. I do think this is true too, I think he's right, to some extent. But at the end of the day, Dead by Daylight's core world is still very much an original creation, and the absence of it in the past year or so, especially, has been more present than ever. To me it begins to feel less like a collective realm, a canvas created by an eldritch spider being, but instead just a collection of a lot of characters. The wider world of DBD needs to be nurtured in order to keep it functioning as a world for these new characters to take part in. I also think it's somewhat a disservice to the developers themselves who have come up with some incredible original characters, and even created releases that have rivaled some of the biggest licensed chapters, such as Unknown and All Things Wicked. A culturally colossal chapter that not only broke the DBD space, but seemingly the wider internet with its incredible marketing, character design, and eventual release and gameplay. The other somewhat lore-adjacent project is of course the DBD movie, which was announced back in March 2023, yet there doesn't seem to be a completed script for it yet, leaving many wondering if it will ever really happen. The movie too is something that I believe is also somewhat misguided in its ideals, depending on the approach they're taking. I have no idea how you can represent the world of DBD in about a 2-hour runtime. I just can't see it happening. I've always thought a better approach would be some sort of anthology TV series, with each episode focusing on a different character and how they came to the realm. To conclude, DBD's lore has been dying for a number of reasons. The core one of course is simply that they literally cancelled it for about 5 months. Upon its return, it's very bare bones and heavily drawn back from where it once was, seemingly falling into the same pitfalls it was originally, and potentially even cancelled many of the stories that had been building up. The lore has felt directionless at times, disconnected from the gameplay of DBD, and from the experience of most DBD players, due to it exploring many things that feel abstract to its gameplay. The fate of the lore feels sealed now, with the developers seeming to have the view that original content is worth moving over for a larger license, with huge projects like the DBD movie feeling forever in limbo, and others such as the casting of Frank Stone feeling almost completely forgotten. So how does this get fixed? Well, I think it's actually not too difficult if given the time and attention. For one, connect the tome lore stories of the killers and survivors directly to their bios, so that people know they exist and can easily find and access them. 2. Re-implement additional lore elements to engage players, such as Benedict Baker and his quotes, which would briefly introduce and comment on a new arrival at the campfire or in the trials. This broadens the world naturally and feels active and relevant to gameplay, and lets people dip into the lore even if it's just briefly with a small quote. 3. Introduce stories that take place within the trials and between the characters more frequently. Explore the relationships and dynamics of the characters around the campfire, or the feelings and thoughts of the killers, and maybe possibly even how they interact. This can be done in writing, but also through those great graphics like the Ghostface one. 4. Introduce some sort of connected realm story that involves the playable characters in-game that builds toward a huge event of some kind, and has tangible effects on gameplay within the game and trials. Introduce something not too dissimilar from the growth that makes people wonder, what is that? Where can I learn more? And then drop hints to it throughout the game to retain this intrigue further, even if it's just in a small way like popping up lore quotes or small hints in the loading screen. Number 5. Keep the deeper lore entries and tomes for those who want to read them, but organize and categorize them into coherent stories. Instead of each tome having a collection of varied characters, instead implement tomes that feature a single character. A tome of the Observer with all of his entries, a tome of the Red Crane, a tome of Maurice, lore books of characters to click on and read through for those who are interested. Present them in a digestible way where people may actually give them a shot. Let people listen to them in audiobook form, but from anywhere in the game, even in the trials maybe. Just any way that opens up possibilities for more people giving it a shot. I love Dead by Daylight, and I love its lore, despite it often being quite messy. There's always been a real beauty to it despite that, something so great about it despite its flaws. I hope one day it's really given the attention it dearly needs and deserves to keep this incredible world functioning and exciting. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.